evening and welcome to the Chatham Select Board August 24th, 2021 meeting. This meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please let me know. Pursuant to the Governor Baker's June 16, 2021 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension of his March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, until April 1st, 2022, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted both in person and via remote public participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410. Our conference ID is 134-208-476#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. And I'd like to remind everyone to please mute your mics and shut off your cameras until you're speaking. I'll point out that we have a lot on our agenda tonight, so it could be a long meeting, especially when you consider our executive session. So let me start with a roll call. I'll go down our list. Select Member Davis.
Present.
Select Member Mitters.
Present.
Select Member Nicastro.
Present.
Select Member Dykens.
Present.
And the chair is present. Just a quick overview on our meeting tonight. After this, we'll do our minutes. Then we will have public announcements and agenda item requests, and that's basically a simple announcement and anything in the future that someone would like. We then get into our new business, the first two of which will be open to public comment during the meeting, during their time on the agenda. The first is the coronavirus update. The second is a Route 28 West Chatham roadway project. We'll then have public comments that have to do with the following agenda items on our business agenda. And that includes a special one-day alcohol license for Creative Arts Center. Hang with me. A quarterly update from the Chamber of Commerce and a request from the Chatham Beautification Committee, Chatham Harwich Wastewater Intermunicipal Agreement, followed by a food truck regulation status update. Then we get into a process of sending town meeting approval articles for home rule petition, then consider calling a special fall town meeting, and then we'll get into committee appointments. So let's start with our minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Second. Any changes or discussion? Dean.
Mr. Chairman, on page 6, at the end of the fourth paragraph, which begins, "It was noted that Mr. Marsh," I would like to add the following sentence. "It was observed that the appeal was moot based on the facts as presented." It was observed that the appeal was moot based on the facts as presented.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. I have none. Let's take a vote. Shireen.
Abstain.
Corey.
Aye.
Dean.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Okay, we have public announcements. The chair has, I have 3 announcements that I'm going to make, and then I'll go out to everyone. Just so everyone knows, you notice that PFAS update is not on the agenda. Basically, generally nothing is different from the detailed report last time, and the latest testing data is not in yet, so we'll have it on our next agenda item. This one may take just a few minutes more. We're presently scheduled and tentatively scheduled for September 14th. We will have a joint meeting with the Airport Commission and the Town Council on governance of the airport. This is a follow-on to a meeting we had December 1st. It was a meeting on the same subject. And again, we'll address the federal, state, and local regulations that specify the jurisdiction and the authority of the agencies that they represent. And I guess the question comes up is why again? There are a number of public claims that are made on the authority of the Select Board, the Airport Commission, and the FAA. And they are inconsistent, at least to me, with the Select Board understanding of existing legal opinions. For example, how airport management, airport flight management, the flight operations, noise abatement, and the role of the Select Board acting as a board in the FAA AMPU process. And any discussion that we ever get into, and the emails that I've seen, is overshadowed by who's in charge. So I'd like to get that out again, have it settled, and please attend, hear the arguments, and I'm looking forward to that meeting for all of us. I have one other comment. The Friends of Chatham Waterway held their annual meeting last Wednesday, and it included, I would say, a balanced and a broad perspective presentation on PFAS, which also included Chatham. And it was done by Dr. Laurel Shader, Silent Spring Institute, and if you want to see it, it's on their website, and I'll get to it in a minute. But they also, as importantly, gave out a captain's award to Chuck Bartlett. And Chuck Bartlett, one of the first people I met when I moved here. And I'm going to give a little bit from his bio. I think it's important. He's an avid sailor. Chuck has been sailing. He hasn't been selling. He's been sailing Chatham Waterway since 1948. He has been a volunteer on many boards in Chatham, including the Friends of Chatham Waterways, the Steering Committee of the Pleasant Bay Alliance, Chatham's Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, the Monomoy Yacht Club, and the Chatham Marconi Maritime Center, and that's where I met him. And while on the board of the Friends of Chatham Waterways, Chuck was actively engaged in water quality of our estuaries, including the water watchers, wastewater management and planning, regulations for sewer flow, the Chatham Blue Pages, and education outreach to local schools. And he does education outreach extremely well. He brought that also to Marconi. Anyway, congratulations, Chuck. It's well-deserved. Thank you. And that's all I have. Anybody on the board have any comment, any questions? Okay. Jill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you can see before you, we have a new face. It's our new department assistant. It's a shared confidential position between the town manager, board of selectmen, or select board, excuse me, and human resources. So I'm proud to introduce Cameron Gardner. He started 2 weeks ago. And if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, if we can have Cameron just to talk a little bit about himself.
Certainly. Go ahead, Cam. Welcome again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's great to be here with you all. So I grew up in Chatham and worked at the transfer station actually for 2 summers while I was in college. I finished my studies at Elon University and went to Spain and taught English for 2 years. And while I was there, I couldn't stop thinking about Chatham. I love the community, and I felt like I really got close to a lot of people in the town during my time at the transfer station. So I'm happy to be back and excited to be working with you all.
Thank you, Cam. Well, then, besides lowering the average age of the group that's here, I think it affects also our town average age. But anyway, welcome. Okay. First thing up is a coronavirus update. Dr. Bob on, I guess.
Mr. Chair, we have one person remotely who would like to speak. It's
Oh.
Frank Messina.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Frank. I should bring it out to the public. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Frank Messina, South Chatham. I'm currently, among other things, Vice Chair of the Friends of Chatham Waterways, and I want to thank you very much for your announcement relative to the Friends of Chatham Waterways annual meeting. And again, thank you very much. And just to call out to the fellow folks in Chatham, you can get to watch Dr. Laurel Schneider, who's a senior scientist at the Silent Spring Institute, on her discussion on PFAS, and as well as her slide projection. And I think it's a very informative presentation, and you can get it at our website, chathamwaterways.org. And again, thank you very much for acknowledging that. We know it's an important topic, and I think she gave a quite balanced presentation of what it is and what we should be concerned and not concerned about. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Frank. Anyone else in the public have an agenda item request or a comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to our new business, and the first up is coronavirus update.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just quickly tonight, to give you the latest COVID numbers, where Chatham stands, and let me share my screen here. And the first thing I have up that hopefully everyone can see, this is our monthly confirmed case count since the beginning of the pandemic in January, well, really March of 2020, when we had our first case recorded, when it really started to hit the United States and Massachusetts. So far in August of this year, August of 2021, we have 15 cases to date. Just to put that in perspective, we only had 4 cases last August in 2020. So we are about 3 times higher so far this month than we were this time last year. Most of those cases are related to the Delta variant, which we know is a lot more contagious than the base variant. And a lot of the cases, as you know, have across the country in Massachusetts and elsewhere, have been happening in vaccinated individuals. Of the 15 cases so far in Chatham this month, we have had 4 cases in vaccinated individuals. We have 6 cases in unvaccinated individuals. We have 4 cases where the vaccination status of the individual is unknown. And then we had 1 case in a person who was partially vaccinated, meaning they had received 1 of the 2 doses of approved COVID-19 vaccine. Let me show you where we are in terms of average daily incident rate, which is another graphic that we've been using on a regular basis. So as you can see, in the last 2 weeks since I last presented to the board, that has leveled off our average daily incident rate, which is the number of cases per 100,000 population. But let me show you one other graphic here, which there's a lot of talk about. Hopefully everybody can see this. This is the percent positivity. So it's the number of positive tests versus the number of overall tests. And this only looks at the molecular test, so it doesn't look at any of the antigen-based tests, but only the PCR test. And one thing that's obvious is that the graph here pretty much mirrors the mirrors the average daily incident rate, although obviously the percent positivity is much lower on the vertical scale. And I throw in a line across at 5% because generally when percent positivity rates are above 5%, that means that the epidemic is basically out of control. When it's below 5%, that means it's under control. You can clearly see the peak that took place in summer of 2022, and then the much larger peak that took place in the January, February, March timeframe of this year. We had a little bit of a secondary peak later in April, but then things have been trending pretty low for the rest of the summer. So right now, Chatham's percent positivity rate is 1.13%, and that continues to be the lowest percent positivity among the 15 towns on the Cape. The Barnstable County rate is approximately 3.05%. So the Chatham rate is about 1/3 of what the county rate is. The statewide 14-day average percent positivity rate is 2.91%. So Chatham continues to do very well on the number of cases as well as the percent positivity. And that just reflects the very high vaccination rates of Chatham residents, which we've talked about previously. And then the last thing I wanted to show, and just because we've been showing this frequently at your meetings, this is the statewide. So this is statewide data for the previous 2 weeks, reported as of last Thursday. And it just continues to show that the highest number of cases on a statewide basis are in that 20 to 39-year-old demographic. They're accounting for, pretty close to 50% of the cases that we have in Massachusetts. We have seen an uptick recently in the younger demographic, so the 0 to 4, the 5 to 9, and the 10 to 14. We've seen an upward tick in those, which mirrors what's been going on across the country, where there have been higher rates of pediatric cases, in part because under 12 is not currently eligible for the vaccine. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen. And then just two other quick things I wanted to make sure the board, as well as the members of the public, were aware of. Yesterday, the Food and Drug Administration at the federal level approved the Pfizer vaccine, gave it full approval. Previously, the Pfizer vaccine, as well as Moderna and J&J, were approved under what's known as an EUA, an emergency use authorization. The Pfizer vaccine, as of yesterday, has now received full FDA approval. That's important because it allows for more mandates from various organizations requiring the vaccine for their people, as well as hopefully it will convince some of the people that were on the fence about getting the vaccine because of the fact that it was only approved under an EUA to now go ahead out and get that vaccine and get that taken care of, which we all know is one of the best ways to bring the pandemic completely under control. And then the other point that I just wanted to bring up is earlier today, the Mass Board of Education granted the Education Commissioner the authority to temporarily require masks for both staff and students in K through 12. And that is through October 1st. And that is regardless of their vaccination status. So even if you're in the age group 12 or above that is eligible for the vaccine, if you're attending one of the K through 12 schools, you will be required to wear a mask. And then come October 1st, the topic will be revisited, and there may be the ability for fully vaccinated students and staff, provided the overall vaccination rate in the school is about 80% or higher, those individuals would be able to forego the wearing of a mask in the school setting. But I'm sure there will be more to come on that as we get closer to the school season and then as things develop through this fall. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Bob, for the presentation. Very concise, very efficient. I have several questions. First, with respect to the 15 cases in Chatham, do we know whether they're symptomatic or asymptomatic?
The majority of those cases were asymptomatic.
Have any of those been hospitalized?
Not that I'm aware of.
And we're not aware of any deaths?
No.
Okay. No. Your positivity chart, the one with the green line, the data at the bottom was really small. I couldn't see it, couldn't read it, obviously. But I wondered if you had, so the current rate, of which Chatham should be justifiably proud, 1.13%, that's for August of 2021. I wondered how that...
That is for the 2-week period from August 1st through the 14th.
Do we have a comparable number for August of 2020? Somewhere around that date?
Yeah, I can certainly go back and look that up. The state just started reporting this information in mid-August of 2020, so we may not have one that is exactly comparable to that 2-week period. But for the next time you meet, we should be able to go back and look at 2020 versus 2021.
Okay. Next, in connection with the meetings and conference calls that I know you participate in with the state, Has there been any suggestion that the Delta variant is peaking, is about to peak? Because I've heard that suggested in the media.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing in the media. There's been nothing that I've seen officially from the state, from DPH or anything that suggests that at this point.
Okay, and the last thing, also in connection with those discussions, is there ever any conversation about therapeutics? I never really hear much about therapeutics from the CDC or Dr. Fauci. It's all vaccination, which is important, but I don't hear anything about therapeutics except when they want to challenge therapeutics that are presented by some critics of their policies.
Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of discussion with the state on the calls that we participate in for local health boards. Occasionally that topic will come up, but nothing substantial. I do know that there's been a number of therapeutics touted, and there was just a report that came out that disproved a number of those. But there are some that are working pretty well. But the majority of them just have not had any data yet to back up that they're effective.
Yeah, one would hope that after more than 18 months of this, that the government in Washington would be looking at the development of therapeutics as a concomitant tool to fight this virus. I just don't hear very much about it. Thank you very much, Bobby. I appreciate your report.
Okay.
Thank you, Dean. Jeff?
Yeah, just briefly, Bob, once again, great report. I was, wishfully thinking that we had these in our rearview mirror, and apparently we're not going to have that for a while. But I'm interested to hear if there's been any buzz in the circles you travel in on mandating vaccines. I hear the for-profit world and the private sector is more and more saying, hey, you're going to come back to work, but we want you vaccinated, blah, blah, blah. So any talk amongst municipalities at all, or anybody talking about mandating vaccinations?
Not that I'm aware of at the municipal level. I think there may be those discussions starting now that Pfizer's has received the full approval. We know that Governor Baker for the executive branch has been mandating or telling people that they either had to be vaccinated or submit to weekly testing. So whether or not that will change into some kind of a mandate now that FDA has rendered its decision, I think we'll just have to wait and see what may happen, say, over the next couple of weeks. We know the U.S. military is going in that direction. They haven't announced the timeline yet. And as you suggest, a number of folks or a number of businesses and all in the private sector are moving in that direction. And I expect we'll hear more of that in the coming days.
Yeah,
but nothing at the municipal level that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. It's just going to be interesting to watch it unfold, because I think that's where the trend's probably going to go, and appropriately so. And appropriately so. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone from the public? No? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bob.
Okay.
Next on our agenda is the Chatham West Main Street, West Chatham punch list. And Tom Temple.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Select Board. I'd first like to apologize to those Select Board members and media that showed up for the walkthrough where I was wrong. I thought that they would have been welcome to just attend and do the walkthrough with us, but unfortunately they weren't able to. So the agenda report before you tonight is a list of those areas that we had concerns, or it's a list of my concerns on the town's behalf that was generated through that walkthrough on August 10th. And you see there's 16 of them. There is one that I didn't add to it, which I'm planning to add to it, which was brought up during the walkthrough by one of the residents, Mr. Buckley. If you leave the Dunkin' Donuts, there's a crosswalk just after the roundabout, and approximately 332 feet from that crosswalk, there's the end of the sidewalk. There's no signage to let pedestrians know that the sidewalk's going to end in 332 feet. And to make matters worse, the state installed a detectable warning device, the panels that they normally use for handicap crossing. They put one down at a driveway entrance, but they turned it and faced it towards the road. So somebody that have some abilities to go and may not see very well get to that delineator, and they feel, and it's directing them like there's a crosswalk there. So that was brought to their attention so that either they can put up signage to forewarn the people that the sidewalks are going to end, and or to remove the delineators and possibly even end the sidewalk earlier where it's going to nowhere, unless they decide to put a crosswalk in. So I'll include that in my list that you see there, but I certainly can open up to any questions that anybody may have with respect to the items that are on that list.
Thank you, Tom. Corey?
Thank you, Peter. No. For our first time, I do appreciate the apology. I know myself, Selectman DeCastro, Selectman Kokolas, were present, and it was made very clear that from the MassDOT project manager that we weren't welcome, nor was the press welcome at that meeting. So very awkward, very, very unfortunate that it took that tone, but I appreciate the apology. I do know, I'm glad we were able to get this punch list put together. I went through it, the couple items that I had have been on it, and obviously others were associated. And I'm going to be careful how I phrase this, but I want to stay within this topic tonight. I know the contractor, put a lot of work into this, and item 9, the catch basins. I guess some of the catch basin work that was done by this contractor here and then in other areas, really over time we're going to tell what was done properly. Maybe maybe that's the wrong term, but I do know there were other work that this contractor did in town that does have some issues, and we've talked about some of the stuff downtown. But overall, I'm glad this punch list was put together. Hopefully, we can move this forward. I do wish that we had a better reception when we went out there, because we were going out in good faith. But I'm glad that Peter was at least allowed to, our chair was at least allowed to walk through the site with all these other representatives. But it's just a little bit sad that we had to have that tone for something that we really wanted to button up. But it wasn't your fault. It's clear where some of the representatives feel about Chatham. And I'll leave it as that for the moment. But thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Corey. Any other comments from the board? Shereen?
Well, Corey, since you brought it up, and I wasn't there to attend, I was out of town, but I did pick up the paper online and read some of the comments made by some of the people that were part of the MassDOT. I was really quite appalled by that, and by the issue being brought up the way it was. And I think in the past year, the town has worked really hard to foster a better relationship under what seemed like a very difficult situation for many years. I mean, I know Selectman Dykens was on the board well before a couple of us and has endured a lot of it, but, it became a political issue. And, we have to listen to the public and do our due diligence with things, but I really was concerned by that tone, especially when we did put together a public forum last year. And we opened up the conversation with them, and I thought the takeaway was that we had sort of had a better relationship. And I know we're going to be looking at Kroll Road very soon, and I'm just hopeful that we can have a better tone with MassDOT for the next project that could come our way. So it's just a matter of a statement, Mr. Chairman, and I hope that we can possibly convey that in some way to MassDOT, that we are open to working with them, but we were very, very taken back by some of the statements of certain staff members.
Thank you, Shereen. Anyone else? Mr. Dykens. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I read it in the paper as well. I was taken aback by his comments. I was taken aback, perhaps not surprised. There's a level of frustration, I think, on the part of MassDOT, given some of the ancient history here in terms of the project's planning and its inception and its rollout. So, I think we heard some of those frustrations. I totally agree with Selectman Davis that over time, I think we've crafted a fairly good relationship with MassDOT, especially in the public hearing that we had, and I thought avenues of communication were much improved. So I would hope that going forward, we could continue an improved relationship with MassDOT should we need them in the future. And we're likely to, need them at some point. It may not be Crow Road, maybe elsewhere, but, so we want to maintain good relations with MassDOT. And I do think that ultimately, after we get the punch list done and to our satisfaction, that Lawrence Lynch and MassDOT did a pretty good job, and the project turned out to provide what it meant to provide, which is slower traffic, safety crossing, better sidewalks, better lighting, better routing coming out of George Ryder Road and taking a left, better routing coming out of Barn Hill Road and going any direction, a right or a left. So, and continuing good access to the businesses there. So, I live there. I travel there all the time. I find it to be very easy to get back and forth through those intersections, those roundabouts. I was concerned this summer that they were all going to be backed up all the time, and they were not. The traffic actually went very smoothly through there all summer long. So I'm thankful for the project. I'm very pleased with the way it turned out. It was a long, arduous road to get it here. So I'll be pleased to see the punch list done, and we move on here, and hopefully with good relationships with MassDOT. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for your efforts too, Tom. I know you've been part and parcel of this for the whole project. Our citizens, are vocal in their opinions, and they have opinions, and they're not, not scared to voice them, and that's wonderful. And in some measure, I think the project was better for having heard those voices. It's just sometimes the context gets a little misconstrued in the communication. So anyway.
Thank you, Jeff. The
welcome.
only thing that I would add after a few comments is that when we all met there, the three of us, and then the press showed up, you could tell there was a huddle, and we were summarily told that we were not welcome. And they didn't put it in that words, but in any case, we were not welcome. Give Tom Temple an attaboy, although he stepped up and said, I told them to come. I told them it was all right. He apologized at that time, which he's done now. And he also made the offer, okay, what about if one of us goes? And it wasn't accepted. And it took a little while we were sitting around and talking, figuring out what we were going to do, that they came back and said, okay, we'll take, one can go. And I was, you kind of go, well, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. But anyway, having said that, once we were walking along, I expected to be either ignored or surrounded with comments. It went well. And I'll say it went well as far as the relationship with Tom. And he had some very strong concerns about areas of puddling and so forth. And that part went fine. It's just a shame that it had to start the way it did, and it really didn't have to be. So anyway, any public comments? Any questions? No? Okay. If not, then thanks very much, Tom. Oh, excuse me.
Thank you
Wait a
very
minute.
much.
Yes, Jeff.
Appreciate it.
Hang on a second.
I just really appreciated the pictures to go along with the narrative here. That was very, very well done. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Tom.
Jeff. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on our agenda, let me get back to it. Of course, it's right here. I'm following you, you know that. Okay, next on the agenda are public comments on our business agenda. Any public comments that you can see? Any hands raised?
No one yet, no.
No, okay, we'll move on to our business agenda. The first one up is a special one-day alcohol license request from the Creative Arts Center. Anyone here from Creative Arts Center, or Frank? No?
Yes, I'm here, sir.
Okay. Do we need any comments on this, or is, you can make a couple of comments if you'd like.
I think the application speaks for itself. The Creative Arts Center has done this many, many times in the past, and I think we have a good track record in the past of adhering to the requirements and ensuring that there are no problems. And again, I'm here speaking because my wife is treasurer of the Creative Arts Center.
Okay. Let's see, Dean was up first.
Mr. Chairman, I'll offer a motion I move to approve the special one-day alcohol permit for wine and malt beverages only to Angela Malt as a representative of the Creative Arts Center for service at 154 Crowell Road on Sunday, September 12th, 2021, from 4 o'clock p.m. to 5:30 p.m.
Second.
Thank you. And we have a second. Any comments or discussion? No? Let's take a vote. Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Chair says aye. And congratulations and have a good time. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you very much.
Next on our agenda is a quarterly update from the Chamber, and I see that Amy's here. Welcome, Mary, and there's also a request from the Beautification Committee.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just for belts and suspenders, just make a disclosure that I'm both a member of the Chamber and the Merchants Association.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you,
Well-
Mr. Chair, and good evening, everyone. It's great to be here in person with you all. It's been a while, but thank you. So I'm going to report on what's been happening on the Chamber end of our arm, and Susan is going to talk about our Merchants Association. So just wanted to let you all know from our members that I have spoken to recently regarding business for the summer season. Business has been good, has been very good. Labor, on the other hand, has been a challenge and continues to be a challenge for the foreseeable future. Businesses are doing what works for them, and they're also keeping in mind that, they don't want to burn out their staff. So you're probably going to see more businesses closing, maybe 1 or 2 days a week, just so that they can keep their staff engaged and still, stay within their budgets. As far as hotel bookings for the fall, those are strong. As far as masks for our businesses, some of our businesses are requiring masks. They're being well received. People aren't giving them a hard time putting them on going into the stores. And businesses are also watching the variants and, making changes as they feel they have to. As far as social media-wise, the Chamber continues to post to social media, both Facebook and Instagram. For Facebook, we have 7,006 followers, and for Instagram, we have 2,830 followers. And if you remember, what we did earlier this year is the Chamber and Merchants combined our social media accounts. So we're all working together and giving the same message to everybody. As far as emails that have been going out to our members since we last met, we've provided 52 informative constant contact emails since March 30th. And also, we've shared 68 news items on the news page of our website. 38 of those have been on behalf of the town. And our members can still stay current with all things Chatham via a news page link that is located on all of our constant contact emails that go out to everybody. And the emails also still contain the town's coronavirus update page on the town website as well. As we mentioned when we presented to you back in March, new this year is we have 4 working committees made up of board members of the Chamber and the Merchants. Just to remind you, there are Marketing Social Media Committee, Membership, Beautification, and Long Range Planning. And they've been very busy streamlining the social media pages, creating weekly spotlight videos of our members. We call it What's Happening Wednesdays. And just a little sneak peek, be on the lookout for, there's going to be a video from Chatham Fire Department on their new house number program that they have going on. And then also there's going to be something from the library going over all the great programs that they have as well. And let's see here. Monthly emails to over 700 people every time we send out an email. And these, they're visitor emails. They're emails that we collect from people that attend our events. So it's just an email that goes out and just lets folks know what's going on in town. And these typically are people that aren't here all the time. So just keeping them informed as to what's happening here. We're also working on a print marketing project to run weekly in the Chronicle for our fiscal year 2022, which starts in October. We've had 7 very successful ribbon cutting events, which a lot of you have attended. That was part of the membership committee. That was one of their initiatives. And you're going to be hearing from Amy Tagliaferri, the chair of our beautification committee, on some great stuff that they're working on. So I don't want to steal her thunder. And then guidebooks, 20,000 copies, more than 20,000 copies have been distributed over this past season. And there's also a digital version that's on our website that can always be accessed. The Bassett House and Main Street booth have been open 6 and 7 days a week, respectively, 2 shifts, and will continue to do so through Columbus Day weekend. And then I was contacted by Joy Jordan, who's the communications person for the Monomoy School District. She informed me that they have 35 new hires, and she wanted to present them with some type of information about town. So we put together some bags that have our logo on the outside and all kinds of information about town, about different businesses, things that they could do, trails, all kinds of info. So she's going to be handing those out to the 35 new hires, I think she said on the 31st. And she said they were all coming from out of the area, which seemed very exciting to me. And then Cape Light Compact, we are going to be working with them again for a town-wide electricity use assessment for our businesses. I believe the dates of that are going to be September 21st through the 23rd. And last but not least, we hope to host an in-person Chamber Merchants Annual Meeting in mid-October. So stay tuned for more info on that. And that's all I have. If anyone has any questions for me, I'd be happy to.
Does anyone, before I do that, welcome, Susan. I can do that. Anyone on the board have any questions? No, that's great comments. Okay, I guess we just get into the beautification.
Susan's got a merchant's
there's one
report.
thing that you mentioned about, you're staffing the Bassett House and the chamber. How's your volunteer list? I mean, how does one volunteer for the chamber to sort of be part of, helping out?
They actually could just reach out to me, mary@chathaminfo.com. And the great news is it's not a volunteer, they're paid positions. So we're always looking for other people if they're interested in sharing their knowledge about our great town.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jeff?
You guys have a venue for the annual meeting that hopefully will face-to-face? or-
We are working on that.
Working on it, okay.
That's what we're trying to
Okay.
nail down right now. So,
Thanks. Great report, thank you.
Thank
It's-
you.
and, You go downtown, you guys have to be having a great summer. It's been packed, jammed. And, we'd like to see West Chatham get jammed too. It's been pretty good in West Chatham too.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I noticed that Amy's on our,
I'm next, actually.
oh, you have that too?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm the Merchants
Go ahead,
Association.
Susan, you
So
bet.
this is the Merchants Association arm. We're like an octopus. We have several arms.
Okay.
The Merchants Organization continues to hold bi-monthly meetings. They're the first and third Thursday of the month at 8:30. We're actually doing them by Zoom. And they are open meetings. Anyone is welcome to come. The members, the chamber staff comes, merchants come, town staff, and members of the Board of Selectmen have been there. In fact, almost, I think all of you at one point. And the link to these meetings is posted in the constant contact emails and on the website, actually, too. Art in the Park just finished last Friday. It was a tremendous success. 50% of those funds go straight to the artists, so hopefully they'll spend them in town. The balance of the funds raised is our nut for everything that we do for the following year. So that's our nest egg, and that's the seed money that starts everything. And some of it we think will go towards the beautification committee at Kate Gould Park. Some of it maybe to Monomoy Community Services. We haven't voted on any of this yet. We were waiting till we found out exactly how much we raised. The oars in the stores scavenger hunt is still continuing. It went live as an auction as of last, I think, Friday night or Saturday morning. The oars are available for bidding. They fit lovely over your doors. So, you know, each one of you could put them in your office or something. You go to chathaminfo.com to purchase them, and that closes September 10th at 8 o'clock p.m. So the scavenger hunt participants turn in their scavenger hunt booklet at the booth, and they get a beach ball. And that's been tremendously successful. They also have a chance to raise a gift basket, to win a gift basket. Mondays on Main is still ongoing. 2 of them, unfortunately, were rained out, and yesterday got closed a little early because of the weather. But the turnout has been great. I know that the Wayside reported their Monday nights have been terrific. So that's really good. And we're going to have one in September as well. So that'll be good. Pumpkin People is October 15th to the 31st. Again, a lot of this all depends on our COVID numbers and where we are, but we're planning as if we can go ahead with these things. Oktoberfest is October 23rd. Again, depends on COVID. And Christmas Stroll starts the 12th of December, and we're going to do the 12 days of Christmas. So we're going to expand it over a longer time frame because we don't want that concentrated weekend. We want to spread it out a little more. And then Amy Tagliaferri can tell you all about beautification.
Okay. Hey, before Amy starts, just
Yep.
a word. It just dawned on me. I'm sitting here, and I haven't been here all my life, but since the time that I've been here, with the chamber and the Merchants Association working the way you did, it's considerably different in the summer here now, and it's nice. It's really nice. So, when I think of my grandkids coming and whatever, there is something for them to do all the time, which has to do with the town, and they remember that. So
Yep.
thank you very much.
We're going to make it the best town.
Okay, Amy, it's your turn. Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm the chair of the beautification committee, which is made up of chamber and merchants members. And we've also reached out to, we had Anita show up from the Chatham Band and the Friends of Trees and Jen Stella from the Garden Club. Our aim was to just improve on the beauty of Chatham that already exists. And we're starting with Kate Gould Park. And we're before you tonight to see if we can get some plans approved for what we have in store, what we've talked about for Kate Gould Park. We already raised $4,000. The Candyman raised through a fundraiser, and the Garden Club donated $450 to us toward our project. And our project is to fix the grounds and landscaping in Kate Gould Park. Gary Thulander from Chatham Bars Inn has talked with the Executive Landscape Company, and they're going to donate their time and labor to install plantings. And I think you guys have a copy of the plan they came up with. It's along the edges of the front and a little bit along the parking lot in Oyster Pond. And we want to raise money to keep those plantings healthy. So we came up with a plan to do, because the walkway, Dan Tobin has been talking with us also. He said that they need a new walkway. So we came up with a plan to buy bricks, memorial bricks for the walkway in Cape Gould Park, and use that money to possibly put in a well or some kind of irrigation to help with the plantings and make the grass greener in the front to where we always have art in the park. We plan on doing that planning in the fall or next spring, pending your approval. And we already talked to Park and Rec, they approved us and our plan, and it won't cost any money to the town. And that's pretty much it. We're just looking for your blessing to move forward with the fundraising.
Okay, thank you, Amy. I just have one comment first, and then I'll turn it over to the board. And we received an email that talked about the sidewalks. The reason I'm bringing it up is because that was going to be my question. You know, and when I was on the planning board, the whole discussion of whether or not you put bricks on a sidewalk was always an arduous argument on whether or not you could walk on it or not. And we did get a response. It depends on what kind of bricks you use and whether they're wire cut or not, or you could also use bituminous, concrete, bricks. So I'm glad that they made that comment, and I don't know if that cost any more or whatever, but that was my only question, and I just thought I'd bring it up because I know of places where brick walkways are just like anything else. It's not like the old bricks, and I should have, but I never realized there was there was a difference like that. So, anyone on the board? Start with Shereen, then right down the board.
I guess one of the questions was about watering and maintenance of the new garden areas, and that would fall the responsibility back to the town on that. Is that what you guys are going to maintain?
No, it wouldn't. No, we've already talked to the Wayside and Chatham Bars Inn and other businesses to help with the watering until we can get some kind of well installed.
Okay. It's a really beautiful plan, and I really appreciate the beautification. One thing I'd like to actually start, maybe suggest for future projects is that we start looking at more indigenous and native and bee-friendly plantings, some that are drought-resistant and something that sort of sets a tone that we're, hydrangeas are beautiful and roses are gorgeous, and I love them in the summer, but somehow I just think we could try to be more bee-friendly, maybe, perhaps. But it's a great plan. I'm very happy to see it and appreciate all the work that you guys have done. Get a little more information on the brick thing, Amy. Like, you have a form here that's going to, and you have characters with spaces for messaging. Is it just going to be names, or just, what is your vision of that?
We're working with the same company that the Atwood House worked with. And I've talked to them a few times, and you can put logos, you can put names, you can do anything that you want. And they make it, walk friendly, like back to the sidewalk question.
How are you going to promote the brick project? Is it going to be on your website, or?
It'll be on, actually, there'll be a link to the form on the chathaminfo.com. We'll link to the website. They actually create a website for you, and it will link there. Trying to think what else we were just waiting for your approval. I mean, we've already had requests for bricks.
All right, great. Thank you.
Corey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I think conceptually this is a great idea. I think, adding more upgrades to the park would be wonderful. I just stress to do your due diligence on the brickwork, because that's the only concern I do have, because I do know, in the wintertime, we're going to be putting salt on it, and then, the asphalt that's there has been beat to kingdom come and back. And over time, I'm sure this will take some wear and tear. So just what makes sense for a longevity, I would just want to just double check all the details for what's going to last for a long time. But visually, I think this would be great. I really do. Just pure curiosity. Any concept of adding a lighting element to the pathway?
We already did.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
All right, I
we
missed
put in
that.
electricity.
All right, good. I missed that on the plans then.
No, it was already done last year.
Oh, the conduit, I know, yeah. Okay, well, I just want to make sure we keep that.
It's lighter and brighter and more efficient. All of the lights have been upgraded and they're all LED, and we've, we redid the entire electrical system.
Perfect.
And we
Perfect,
paid for it.
perfect. And, no, I think this is good. I think, I'd also put my pitch in, maybe we should add a couple more trash cans in the area. I think downtown in general could benefit from some trash cans and recycling
Well,
barrels.
you're already greeted with a plethora of trash cans when you enter the park. Yes.
But maybe more in an appealing manner.
We're working on trash
Yes,
cans. We
yes.
have our garbage consultant, Graham Milley, and he's been looking into different garbage cans and planters and
I've gotten
things.
some input from some people just for 2 cents worth. They said the old school trash barrels were probably the most efficient. Some of these nicer solar compactors are not as preferred. We'll leave it as that.
Yeah.
But no, I think this is a good step in the right direction for sure. Very, very supportive.
That was why I actually volunteered to be the chair of this committee, was to help the trash cans downtown.
Thank you, Corey. Dean?
Thank you, Peter. I will say the Railroad Museum people are very happy with the trash can that was recently placed there, which helps. Thank you very much, all of you, for your reports. This is, I think, a very exciting plan, and I support it. Just had a couple of questions. Will you have enough funding from the sale of bricks and your other funding sources to finance the improvements that you're making? Okay. Is there going to be any kind of oversight or control over the content of the language that goes on the bricks? I mean, if someone has something that's a little bit out of line.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
There definitely will be, yes.
Okay.
Common sense prevails.
Okay, all right. I don't have anything else. I think it's a great idea. I look forward to voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Dean, Jeff, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, great looking plan, really excited about it. I think it's hard to maintain grass there, so I think getting irrigation there is very important.
That's why you can't maintain grass,
Yeah, right.
that in the shade.
The type of grass you plant there is important as well, as you note, Sue. So anyway, and I do echo the concerns of Selectman Davis and Selectman Metters in terms of the planting materials we use and the kind of bricks we use. I totally get it. You want wheelchairs, we get down, back and forth along that pathway, et cetera. So there has to be pretty darn flat and pretty together.
It'll be a lot flatter than it is now, because right now it's going over tree roots.
Yeah, and the going up to the restrooms, is that going to be all grass as well? Are you guys going to mess with that
It's
area?
going to stay grass at this particular
Okay.
point. What we want to do is clear to the side of the bandstand a little bit where the brush is starting to take over, and that will increase the seating around that area.
Right.
Yeah.
right. Okay, great. Looks like a great plan, and, can't wait to vote for it.
All right, thank you. Okay, Shereen?
By the way, thank you very much.
Yeah, yes,
Anything else?
two.
If not, could I have a motion to approve the beautification plan?
So moved.
Yep, second.
Okay, any comments? None? Start with Shereen.
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff? Chair
Yeah, I
says,
guess so, aye.
Chair says aye. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Yep. Okay,
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Amy.
yeah, Amy, I forgot to say hello.
That's okay. Thanks very much. I'm
Do that.
excited.
Okay, next on our agenda is Chatham Harwich wastewater intermunicipal agreement, and Dr. Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just quickly for the board and the public's edification, back in 2017, Chatham and Harwich entered into an intermunicipal agreement which allowed for areas in Harwich and the East Harwich area that were planned to be sewered, that would allow the wastewater from there to be brought into Chatham for treatment at our wastewater treatment facility, and then recharge into the groundwater. That was a result of conversations that had taken place probably over 10 years previously between the two towns, kind of on and off, where Harwich, we had finished our comprehensive wastewater management plan. Harwich was underway with theirs. They were looking at various alternatives. One area they were looking at was the Pleasant Bay watershed, which, as you know, we share with Harwich, Brewster, and Orleans. And at the time, originally, the original thought was Harwich was going to build their own wastewater treatment plant to serve the East Harwich area. They subsequently had some discussions with us. They did some analysis and determined that there would be significant cost savings if they were to partner with Chatham and bring their wastewater to Chatham for treatment and ultimately recharge. And so subsequently that led to the intermunicipal agreement, which was signed in 2017 after both towns had discussed it at their respective town meetings and gotten basically approval to authorize the boards of selectmen at the time in both towns to enter into that IMA. The IMA basically sets out the parameters upon which flow from the East Harwich area can come into Chatham. It set out a payment schedule. It set out cost sharing for some of the infrastructure that was being developed that would be shared by both towns because of this project. And so anyway, ultimately it was signed and implemented. So both towns then subsequently went to the state SRF program, received funding through the state's low interest loan program, and construction ensued. And we are now just about completed list items. And then hopefully by September, we anticipate we will have all the information from the engineers, including as-built drawings and all the other videos, and the T's will be crossed and the I's will be dotted. And both towns will be able to start issuing connection orders. So as part of that IMA, it created a wastewater advisory board of 5 individuals, 3 from Chatham and 2 from Harwich, who were tasked with overseeing the IMA and then working with town staff to address any issues that came up during the process of connecting the 2 towns together, and then subsequently in the future, any issues that would rise relative to the interconnection. And that advisory board consists of the Chatham Town Manager, David Whitcomb, and right now we have a vacancy for the 3rd spot. It was previously the previous chairman of the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee. And then on the Harwich side, it's their Harwich Town Administrator, Joe Powers, and then Larry Ballantyne, a member of the Board of Selectmen in Harwich. So that group has been meeting, I won't say frequently, but on a regular basis, even through the COVID pandemic. As construction moved along, we gave regular updates to that board on construction issues and other issues that came up. And so there's 3 issues that are addressed in amendment number 1 that is being presented to you tonight. And the first issue is, let me share my screen here. The first issue that we talked about, or that the board talked about, was the fact that right now, as you're probably aware, the town line between Chatham and Harwich runs right down the middle of a portion of Old Queen Anne Road. And you can see on the graphic that I have up right now, obviously we have wastewater infrastructure now that's been installed along Old Queen Anne Road, as well as up into Harwich. Obviously their construction's on their dime, our construction's on our dime. But in order to make a clear demarcation, if you will, we created the attached figure, and there was agreement that Chatham would assume, or already had assumed, responsibility for the infrastructure under Old Queen Anne Road and up to the first manhole in the various side streets. So at Cemetery Road, Herndon, Route 137, and Church Street. So Chatham would be responsible for maintaining that infrastructure along Old Queen Anne Road and up to that first manhole on the various side streets. And so that's the first part of amendment number 1. It just clarifies that Harwich is giving Chatham permission to assume responsibility for that, and provides the appropriate language developed by the Chatham Town Council. The second item in the IMA has to do with the fact that there are certain milestones in the IMA for payments by the town of Harwich to the town of Chatham. And it's basically called a capacity purchase fee. And that's in Article 3 of the IMA. This was all negotiated as part of the original discussions about creating the IMA. Chatham has already received the first payment from Harwich, which was due upon signing of the IMA for $2,265,000. And then there were four other milestone payments that were to be made over the course of the IMA. The next payment, which would be due once flow from Harwich starts to come into Chatham, is $1.5 million. And then the third payment is due when either the flow reaches 50,000 gallons a day or 5 years have transpired. And then the final payment is due when flow reaches a larger volume or 7 years from the signing of the IMA. So Harwich expressed a concern that because of the time it took to get the designs completed, DEP permitting, as well as DEP SRF funding, and then the construction, basically what happened is Harwich would be looking at 2 payments in the same fiscal year. So they would be looking at the first $1.5 million payment upon commencement of flow, and then a second $1.5 million payment next June, which would be the 5-year anniversary of the IMA. So they asked Chatham if there could be consideration of spreading those payments out so that they didn't have a $3 million hit all in the same fiscal year. The committee met, reviewed that, discussed it, and ultimately agreed that that was a reasonable request. And so the amendment number 1 changes the payment schedule from 5 and 7 years to 7 and 9 years. So Chatham will still receive a payment in this current fiscal year of $1.5 million upon commencement of flow, but then the next payment, which would be either at 50,000 gallons or 7 years, so conceivably it could happen sooner than 7 years if the flow ramps up quickly. And then the final payment would be at 9 years, or the flow trigger. Again, it could happen sooner if the flow trigger is met. So that was the second item contained in the amendment. And then the third item has to do with operation and maintenance of the system. As you know, we have contract operators, Weston and Sampson Operations, that operate and maintain the Chatham sewer system. Harwich was looking, obviously, they needed somebody to operate and maintain their new collection system and pump stations. They looked at various alternatives, from hiring their own town staff to hiring a consultant like we have. And then ultimately we had discussions about potentially Harwich engaging the same operators that we have, Weston and Sampson Operations. And we determined, or the group determined, that that was the situation that made the most sense. Obviously, Chatham has a vested interest in how this Harwich system is operated and maintained, because the flow ultimately reaches us for treatment, as well as we have a lot of the equipment already in-house, vac trucks and jet washers and other equipment that would be needed to maintain a collection system. And Harwich had already approached us about, using that equipment through some kind of rental agreement. And so ultimately, it just made sense to consider having our contract with Weston and Sampson expanded to include the Harwich collection system and pump stations, with Harwich paying whatever cost differential there is to modifying our contract to do that. And so that is item 3 in the amendment. So the amendment has been drafted. It was discussed at the last meeting of the advisory board, and it was voted unanimously to recommend to the board, to this select board, as well as the Board of Selectmen in Harwich, that it be adopted. It went to the Harwich Board of Selectmen at their meeting last night. where they approved it unanimously. And so we're bringing it to you for tonight for further discussion and a potential vote on this amendment to the IMA. All the other terms and conditions of the IMA stay the same with the exception of the 3 items that I've outlined for you tonight. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. The only thing I would just add, in item 2, the 2 payments each would be 1.5 million, right? To add up to the 3. Okay. Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, thank you, Bob, for the presentation, and I thank former Selectman Whitcomb and Jill for their participation, and Larry Sampson, former chairman of the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, for his participation. My first question is, you mentioned there's a vacancy on that board. Is this posted, Shauna? Do we know? Can we get it posted? Because we need to fill it, especially since Harwich has some interest in wanting to expand the access to our system to other parts of East Harwich, I gather, from reading the minutes. So just a couple of questions. Select Board Member Dykens and I were part of the negotiating group that led to the agreement that was approved in 2017. So I have a couple of questions. Bob, with respect to the 3rd item, the collection system, under the agreement as is, without the amendment, who was responsible for the modifications to the Chatham piece past the connection points? Was it us that were needed to accommodate the Harwich flow?
I'm not sure quite what you mean by past the connection point. Obviously, any infrastructure in Harwich, they are responsible for.
Right.
And anything in Chatham, we're responsible for. That's why we had amendment number 1 to lay out specifically where those responsibilities were.
Right, but as I understand,
Item number 1, sorry.
as I understand, the 3rd piece of the amendment is to make modifications to the portions of the Chatham system, including pumping stations, once the flow comes into Chatham from Harwich. Do I understand that correctly? That's what this 3rd piece is for?
No, the 3rd piece is for all the collection system in Harwich. So item number 3, the change that was made there just adds language that indicates that if Chatham were to modify our contract with Weston and Sampson to encompass the Harwich collection system in the East Harwich area, at whatever the additional cost is, whatever X is, Harwich is responsible for paying that additional cost. So if we were to modify our contract with Weston and Sampson to take over operation and maintenance of the Harwich collection system, and that requires, say, $100,000 increase in our contract with Weston and Sampson, Harwich will pay that $100,000 increase.
So the current agreement, without this amendment, is silent on that point, sounds like.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
that's what I was asking. My third point is an observation. As you mentioned, this was back in 2017. The proposed IMA was thoroughly debated and vetted and argued back and forth, both at the selectmen's level and at town meeting. We went to town meeting even though we weren't legally obligated to go to town meeting, because I think the board felt it was an important public issue that we wanted to get the public endorsement for. That's literally what it says in the minutes of that town meeting, which I have in front of me. So we're going to have a special town meeting, it looks like, in September to deal with water issues. So I guess I just wanted to throw it out to the board whether we might want to be consistent and go back to town meeting. It doesn't sound as though Harwich is going to do it. I guess it depends on whether you regard these changes as substantive or something less than substantive. So I'm not sure how to come down on that. If we weren't going to have a special town meeting in September, I'm not sure I would even raise the point. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Jeff and then Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Duncanson, on item 3 that Selectman Castro raised, we haven't got language now of yet addressing item 3 at all. We have nothing addressing the notion that Weston and Sampson's going to perhaps increase their costs because of Harwich's participation in that agreement, right? We don't have it.
That is correct.
Okay.
The language that's in amendment number 1, the first sentence and all is part of the original IMA.
Yep.
The last sentence is part of the original IMA. It's really just the sentence in the middle that says, further, Harwich shall be responsible for and pay to Chatham as fixed O&M costs an additional sum equal to any increase in contract payments to the Chatham contract operators relating to or resulting from said contract operation and maintenance of the Harwich collection system. That is the new sentence that
Right.
was added to that paragraph as part of the amendment number 1.
Okay, thank you. The gallons per day, the 50,000 gallons per day, if we should hit that threshold before year 7, the money would kick in. The
Yes.
ask would kick. And then again, in the same vein, if we hit 150,000 gallons per day before year 9, the monies would also kick in.
Yes.
And
Yes.
any idea what the odds are on reaching the first threshold, the 50K?
I think the first threshold is relatively easy to meet, if you will, because as you know, there's a fair amount of development, commercial development, especially
Right.
in the East Harwich area. So they may be some higher flows. So I wouldn't be surprised that the 50,000 gallons a day is reached prior to the year 7. The only caveat to that is, just like Chatham, people are given a year to connect, and I think in Harwich they may actually be, or they may be contemplating moving that out to 2 years.
Okay.
So that may be the only thing that kind of slows it down, but the 50,000 is not that big a number.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's helpful. And on the money, we're getting potentially the money could be as much as 2 years later than we anticipated, both for the third payment and the fourth payment. I get it. I just, hopefully they'll hit the 50,000 before then. And I think the doubling down in 22 for them is onerous. I hear them, I hear that they believe it's onerous. So I'm interested to hear what the rest of the board thinks of postponing the payments. There was any discussion of going to years 4 and 6 rather than 5 and 7?
There was not.
Okay. And in terms of going back to town meeting, I don't think we have to, but I don't think it's necessary, to be honest with you, but it's a language change, and the only thing that might be contentious is the putting off the money a little bit. Okay, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll address the concept of going to town meeting first. It's an interesting concept. It would be, I guess, consistent in what we did in the past. We're not required to bring it to town meeting the first time around. We have a special town meeting, theoretically in a short amount of time. So it's something that'd be worth discussing. I'm not sure if it would benefit us at all, but it's definitely something I'm not going to dismiss quickly. The money was a major factor in the conversation. There's no punches pulled. So I do think, if I'm processing this correctly, we're going to look at the same amount of money in the end with probably a 2-year extension on that with no additional compensation to the town. I think there are some who criticize that the payments that we finally agreed upon were not enough, and they were to the benefit of Harwich. So I do think if we did bring it to town meeting, I do think that people would oppose it without some kind of compensation to that final number. I think that is a realistic viewpoint that people will have. Some will have. So, was there any discussion by giving Harwich, and I get having 2 big payments in 1 fiscal year, totally understand their position on that. But by pushing out an extra 2 years, was there any discussion on any kind of, I hate to use a compensation, but any type of component that would that would be paid to Chatham in light of that this amendment? I mean, was that discussed at all?
No, there was no discussion of that topic.
Because, I mean, I think the final dollar amount was a major discussion point for the IMA. So that is the one thing I'm a little concerned about. You know, the optics of that. You know, I want to be a good neighbor for sure with Harwich. We're going to have a long relationship, hopefully, with them. But I do think we need to just cover all our bases. So I do have some concern about pushing it out an extra 2 years without some kind of compensation to the town, reasonable compensation.
Shireen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. I think that the 50,000 gallon or 5-year is, or 7-year, whatever it would be. If we didn't have the 50,000 gallon benchmark, I think it would be a whole different issue. That's how I look at it. It's still a threshold, that threshold's the same. I don't really think we need to bring this to town meeting. I agree with Selectman Dykens that this is a language change to most degree. I just need a little clarification and pardon my ignorance on sewer infrastructure. This is for Dr. Bob, but I also like to hear what our Select Board member, Wickham, he's in the audience, has to say about the agreement as well. It says that you said that we were going to be responsible for up to the first manhole in Harwich for maintenance. Why is there a change? Is that a clarification, or is that a change in who does what? And is that going to cost us more money in the long run, or is Harwich going to pay for that in the long run?
No, it's not a change, it's a clarification. And really the only reason we have it is because, as I mentioned, the town boundary between Chatham and Harwich basically goes right down the middle of the road where the sewer goes. And so we had discussions early on about, okay, how are we going to do this? Who's going to be, if a problem occurs on that line or in that manhole, who's going to be responsible for it? You know, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, who's going to be going out, Chatham or Harwich? And where are people, how are people going to know who to call? And so, if the sewer main was 6 inches on either side of where it is, or 2 feet, it would be wholly in one town or the other, and that would make it clearer. So based on our discussions and based on discussions at the technical level with our engineers and Harwich's engineers, that's when we drew up that figure that I showed, which basically says we're taking responsibility. Because look at it this way, if Harwich wasn't there, we'd be responsible for it anyway. We installed that sewer for the benefit of Chatham residents. If we didn't have the IMA, and let's say Harwich wasn't going to be sewering the East Harwich area, and we put that sewer main down that road, we'd be responsible for it no matter what. So we just felt that this way it's clear for everybody. We have a figure that clearly shows how far we are going with responsibility and where Harwich then picks it up and goes from there. Will it result in any additional cost? On the face of it, if it does, it's absolutely minimal. I mean, we've picked up, 4 or 5 additional manholes that are over the Harwich line, if you will. But, maintenance of manholes is very small. That's a very small fraction of operation and maintenance of a sewer collection system. These are all brand new. They've all been fully tested and passed, all the tests. So, there should not be any substantial maintenance required for them for many, many years to come.
Thank you. I was hoping that David would come up and speak to that, but I have one more.
Sure.
And the question I have is, why not, why didn't the agreement discuss, it's going out to 7 and 9, why didn't it go out to 6 and 8? I mean, why 2 more years rather than 1 more year? Is it because Harwich is having some issues, or is this, that was my question. I don't know who.
Mr. Chair.
I think,
yeah.
Well,
I
before
can't-
we, Dr. Bob, you want to answer that?
I think
Well,
I'd
I
like
was
to
just
hear
gonna
from
say,
Jim.
I think the only reason it went to 7 and 9 was just to be consistent with the 5 and 7 that it had been 2 years before. You know, that's what Harwich proposed. That's what the advisory board discussed. There was nobody brought up going to 6 and 8. If it had been brought up, it would have been discussed.
Jill, any comment?
Yeah, the town administrator from Harwich submitted correspondence to us specifically requesting the 7 and 9. So we didn't consider the 6 and 8, we were just considering their request. And again, this is, you know, while the Harwich Board of Selectmen has approved this, this is something for the board to consider. But we had detailed conversations, and again, with that other flow component, we could still get payments sooner than later. So that was something that we felt comfortable with.
Thanks, Jill.
Okay, I know David Whitcomb wants to speak, not because he's a former selectman, but because he's on the advisory board, but I want to make a comment first, and then we'll go to David. My comment, annual town meeting, you know, it was an interesting concept, not concept, but it was an interesting point that I didn't think of, but I'm sort of leaning not to, because it looks like a language thing, but I'll see what the rest of the board thinks of this. I look at this, and maybe I'm reading it wrong. You know, the reason we're where we are, excuse me, is that the timing of our engineering, funding, and construction took longer. I mean, we are, if our construction and engineering and that whole process had come sooner, we wouldn't have this problem. We started the problem, and I get it. You know, we're pushing the cost down the road a little bit, but is it fair to say we were close to 2 years being later than we expected, or was it more like just 1 year before? And that's one question. And the second thing, as far as who takes care of what, you know, that's a little piece of the process, and it seems to me that if you're the guys that are running the show as far as the total water system, I don't want that little piece being looked at by someone else. I mean, it just makes sense that it would be the person who's taking care of it, who's the best one, should take care of that piece of, that extra section of sewer. That makes sense to me. I guess back to you, Dr. Bob, as far as how long did the delay take? And, you know, okay, we're a little part of the problem.
I would say probably it's a year later than we may have hoped it would have been. And that was a combination of, you know, COVID delays and, you know, getting things approved with the SRF and through DEP and everything else. But I mean, you know, it's actually gone pretty well. We had one contract on our side, one contractor. Harwich actually had two contracts with two different contractors on their side. But, you know, we all ended up at the same place at about the same time. So I think from that perspective, it worked out. We all wish, you know, things would go faster, but, you know, Harwich was digging up Route 137 and whatnot, you know, and we don't allow construction in the summer. So, you know, I think everybody worked their best and, you know, we ended up at the same place. Had we known what the timetable was, maybe it would have been, you know, everything in the IMA would have been pushed out another year. But, you know, when we did it, we had our best estimates, and, you know, I think we ended up pretty darn close.
Thank you. Okay, David. Mr. Whitcomb. Oh, there he is. I thought he was online. Well, it's nice to see you in person.
It's nice to be here. I really just came to spend some time in this room, because it's been a long time. It's hard to...
Turn your mic
You gotta push the button, Dave.
Oh, that's new.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay. Is that okay? So it's really hard to add anything to what Dr. Bob has said. He's reviewed this thoroughly. We have his counterpart in Harwich is Dan Pelletier, who is their, I believe his title is Water and Sewer Superintendent. But we've had a lot of good guidance on this board, on this advisory committee, and that's what we are. We're an advisory committee to you, and we're coming here to suggest that you support this amendment. Two of them, I think, are really clarifications, and they benefit Chatham as far as, you know, honing down what future cost might be and what could go. And the 2 years, the 5 and 7, 5 going to 7, and 7 going to 9, was suggested by, as our town manager said, the town administrator in Harwich. And we really never really thought about challenging that, because seems like the most important thing is to get the flow from both communities. Mostly, this area is going to protect, I think, the watershed Pleasant Bay. So that, to me, is still the most important thing. We did ask, the committee did ask Jill, and she, I think, in turn asked our town finance director, Alex Alela, if that fiscal impact would do anything to our budgets, and the answer was no. So we just went ahead with that. I didn't really want to speak. I just think you should support it. And I'll just, as far as, I mean, this was the document, 26 pages that went to town meeting. This document is like 1 page of clarification. So I think the select board can make that decision. But I'd be happy to answer anything else that.
Dean?
Thank you, David. Just wanted to follow up on something that Corey brought up. Do you think there would be any receptivity on on part of the Harwich people if we wanted to tack on an interest charge, for example, to the $1.5 million payments that might be delayed, if they're delayed? I mean, that's...
I think that would...
The payment schedule is something that is material to the contract. That's
right.
Really...
But I think we just finished our portion of this connection, our pump station at, down the end of 137. So I think, and if you look at our schedule in trying to get this wastewater plan together and the infrastructure together, it takes a long time. So I think originally when the 5 and 7 years was put out there, it was kind of like, okay, that might be what we can do, but I don't know that that was really ever realistic. Again, I think the most important thing is the flow, and I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it would be a good idea to try to tack on some extra money just, to put this off. And again, if we meet the flow, then it won't be necessary. So I think that just complicates things. I think this has been a good partnership, and we need to partner with Harwich if we're going to ever attain the quality, the water quality that we're trying to do here. So I don't think it's necessary.
Do you think that a good relationship with Harwich on this issue, which we've had from the beginning, I think, might cross over into our interactions with them on the schools?
Dean,
I'm not saying it's contentious now, but there are some serious issues.
Yeah, and I think they're
two
two totally different issues. And I have some issues myself and on the schools that I think have to be vetted, but I don't think you can hold one against the other. I don't think that's a good idea.
No, I just wondered if there was you got some sense that their approach to things might carry over to our conversation in the schools, or maybe it's just something we can't
I don't
predict.
know. I'm on the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee. I'm
Okay.
just want to talk to you about that. Dean.
Good answer.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Peter. No, I fully agree that this conversation and the schools are two completely different conversations. They should not be intermixed. Totally different conversations with different parties and everything. So I full agreement with that. One should not connect with the other. I am frankly hung up on what where's going to be what's best for the town of Chatham. And I distinctly remember the criticism that was put out to some level that the money, the total amount that was being charged to Harwich for this IMA was not enough. And I can just see if we do move forward and support these 3 amendments, that again we're going to get criticism that they're going to get another 2 additional years because of certain concerns they have as a town, with no benefit to us. And it is a business, and I'm not looking to do anything unreasonable, but I do have a concern without putting some kind of reasonable consideration for the town if they want to stretch that out another 2 years. And that's what I'm throwing on the table now for conversation. That's a concern of mine, just a perception for our taxpayers.
Yeah, and there's a contingent out there that no amount of money for this deal would have
Right.
been enough, and Mr. Selectman Dykens and, is it selectman, select person? Dean and Jeff, negotiated this in good faith and got the original agreement, so, I don't know, Corey, I think you're poking the bear, and I don't know that it's necessary. Again, I think the most important part of this whole agreement is to clean up the waterways. In a couple of years, I don't think it's going to make any fiscal difference, according to Alex Halela.
Okay, Shereen, go ahead.
You've convinced me. I mean, I had my concerns on the timing and whatnot, but the bigger picture is the water quality and the regional working together. And the fact that the finance director says that this isn't an onus on the town to do convinces me that, we should go ahead with the agreement and move forward. And so I'm just going to place a motion, and then I'm sure we can consider it more discussion. I move that the Select Board vote to execute Amendment Number 1 to the intermunicipal agreement for wastewater collection and treatment by and between Chatham and Harwich.
Second.
Was that a second?
Second.
Oh, thank you. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would have been inclined to support sending this to town meeting since we have a town meeting coming up, but it's pretty obvious that a majority of the board is not inclined to do that, so I'm not going to offer that motion. I also would point out that in the public comment section of tonight's meeting, there were no comments on this. So I thought it was a good agreement back in 2017, and it was thoroughly debated. But if I thought we had a majority sentiment in the other direction, I would tack on an amendment to send this to town meeting, but I don't think we do. So I'll support the motion.
Thank you, Dean. I'll just make one comment, and I agree with your last statement. I was leaning towards not sending it, but if we had considerable comments, I might go the other way. However, this agreement was negotiated in good faith. Once you have a contract, that's the deal, right? That's what you agreed to. Some people may think it was too much, some people may think it was less, but you have a deal. We now get to a position where a number of things happened that delayed the contract procedures as they move forward because of engineering and design, maybe a year or so. You're going to ask for some more money. You'd have to consider that whatever the cost was, we'd be paying lawyers more than the 2% interest we'd get, I would think. I don't know, but I get where you're coming from. but let me just finish one. Maybe it's more, but to me, that kind of aggravation over the next, I don't know how long it would take to go back to Harwich. This doesn't make sense to me. And basically, I would support the motion. Go ahead, Corey. I'm sorry.
Forgive me for making this comment. But comments have been made about no public input on this tonight. My feeling, and you know it very strongly, if we had a back to public comment dialogue during a discussion, we may have had more discussion and more input tonight from the public. That's just my opinion. You know it. That's going to put it on the table. But thank you. I know I'm outvoted tonight.
Your point's well taken. I understand. Okay. Any other discussion? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just want to be on record as saying I didn't mean to say 4 and 6, but 6 and 8, as Selectman Davis pointed out, it would be I'm not suggesting that, but that's what I wanted to say. And I think that the overarching issue is one that hopefully we get the 50,000 gallons per day before year 7, and we clean up the watershed faster than we ever thought. So I think that's the overarching issue here, and I'm going to support the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? None. All right, I'll start down at the other end in this time. Jeff?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Corey?
Nay.
Shereen?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is food truck regulations and an update and a refresher. And town manager or Shauna?
Hi, I'll take it. So just bringing back to the board, basically a status of where we were when the conversation was halted due to COVID back in the early spring of 2020. So we wanted to bring it back to the board to get the conversation restarted. Where we had left off was considering scheduling a community forum on the topic. And the board had generally suggested in the last meeting that this was discussed, that they preferred the Needham model, going with the guidelines rather than a bylaw or any type of zoning regulation, to handle it through guidelines. So, looking forward to hear how you want to proceed.
Okay, okay, we have some, I'll start with comments. Jeff, I think, was first, and then Shereen.
I'm not going to beat this to death. I don't want to really go through it line by line by line. I think we need to have a public forum and solicit our community's input. Thank you.
Shereen?
I agree. I was going to just say that, you know, we have certain considerations that we took into factor with looking at the Needham model. And both our town manager and Shauna have gleaned out some really wonderful questions about all the fees and the permits and limitations and whatnot. So I think that I look forward to doing a public forum where we can have input from local businesses and the community at a time when local businesses aren't taxed out on time. So perhaps we can find out from the chamber and the downtown merchants, you know, maybe they can pose that question during one of their meetings, upcoming meetings, to see when would be a good timing for us to do this, with the ultimate goal that we'd like to bring something or a regulation through the process to next town meeting. This is an enhancement, I think, of the, you know, economic opportunities that we need to see happen in Chatham to be able to attract more diversity and more diverse residents to the town. So that's where I'd like to see the path go, and I really appreciated all the questions you guys gleaned out of that regulation. It was a really interesting read. Thank you.
Corey?
Thank you. No, I look forward to getting this to a public forum, get the public's input, you know, shake the tree on some of the things that we've thought of, maybe things we haven't thought of. The one thing I would like to put on the table that we might want to do a little bit of homework for toward the town, the forum, is scenarios where we would have, we talk about, you know, minimize impacts to the activity of existing brick and mortar businesses. What happens with the scenarios if a certain restaurant or whatever also wanted to do a food truck? How does that play out? You know, you get X restaurant, could they vend their mobile vehicle on their parking lot, or would they be restricted to a certain distance? Or, so this runs scenarios like that out there. That's the one thing I hadn't thought of prior to just going through this packet. So I look forward to the public forum, and I think this is a discussion well overdue.
Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too support having a public forum, and I would like to get input from the merchants and the chamber, I guess in this case especially the merchants. But I did want to ask Shauna, does this draft is in the form of a regulation that the board would adopt. Are we also going to need town bylaw changes?
The only town bylaw change might be, depending on the final form of the regulations, to the outdoor sale of goods in the downtown area. That particular bylaw may have to be amended depending on the content of the regulations.
Because we've allowed that type of activity even
Right.
somewhat loosely, I think. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dean. I would agree with the rest. I think this is, we should have a forum. I like the way you framed it up. A lot of questions that are in there that initially I thought, gee, I could answer those. I can't, to be honest, and I'd like to hear from a number of people. The only thing, and I don't know if I missed it, we talk about parking in public places or using areas. What about something like the community center? Is that already covered, or using the parking lot for the annex? We've done that before. Is that in here, or did I miss that?
There are two different sections. One contemplates use of parking lots, and another contemplates the use of on-street parking. So, again, we
it
can
still fits in
specify
there.
specific town-owned parking lots that we would want it, or where we don't want it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we need a motion for forum, or just a sense of the board to move on? You prefer, I'm sorry?
Consensus is fine.
Okay. So I have a sense of the board that we all agree on a forum. Do we have any negatives? No. So let's proceed with a forum. And like Shereen said, I think it'd be nice to do it, well, some of the merchants are still here, but not when they're busy, right? And the public. Okay. Next is a process of sending town meeting approved articles for home rule petitions and special legislation, and that was sponsored by Mr. Nicastro. Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for putting this on at my request. I did request this agenda item when I learned that 4 pieces of special legislation that were voted favorably at the annual town meeting in June, specifically three housing articles, and one of which I sponsored, and a prevailing wage article, were forwarded to our state legislative delegation for filing with the legislature, and without having been presented first to the select board for our consideration and determination whether to file them. I would point out, and this is my understanding of the law, and I would stand to be corrected if town council were to feel differently, that the town meeting's votes on these articles were merely authorizations, and that's what they literally say, and the select board is not bound to file them. So the determination of whether to file them is for the select board to make, the full board to make at a meeting as part of our executive function under our charter and under state law. So my purpose in putting this forward is to make sure that we follow this process of having these items come back to the board in the future. I throw that out. I don't have any motion. I just don't know if the rest of the board feels that way, but I certainly do. Thank you.
Any comments? Corey?
I have no objection to what you put on the table. I think process is important to the board and the town, and I think it's something we can clearly do moving forward. I don't think there's any. I don't see any objection. At least I don't have any objection. Just from a matter of process, to move forward and bring articles back to the full board for our approval to move them forward for the mechanics. I don't have an issue with that at all.
Thank you. Shereen?
I don't either, Dean, and, just wondering if there is a pre-approval process prior to town meeting that we could consider in our vote, if it wasn't amended or whatever, that we, if it's approved, then moves forward. Just a thought, nothing, I don't want to complicate the matter. It was just something that came in my mind as a matter of efficiency.
Okay, Jill?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so as the board might recall, these were board-sponsored warrant articles with recommendations voted by the board. So in the past, we took that implicitly as the board had supported it, but we're happy to bring back any legislation for the board to support before the formal transmittal.
Okay. Jeff and then Dean?
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to point out, that in fact this board had voted to recommend every one, so that, it's being forwarded to the general court doesn't bother me from an approval perspective. Perhaps from a stamp the process correct perspective, we didn't dot all I's and cross our T's. And to Selectman Davis's notion of having in the body of the warrant article or in the motion, the notion that we have approved any home rule petition being sent that we approve, being sent up to the general court as part of the motion or part of the warrant article, I think is probably very circumspect, probably very thoughtful. So, but I would not, I'd certainly bring them back and we can stamp them approved again and make a formal recommendation to send them to the general court. Thank you.
Dean?
Yeah, I mean, with respect to the suggestion offered by Shereen, when an article is first presented to us to file special legislation and to submit that to town meeting on the warrant, it certainly would be open, as I think Jeff has just offered, for someone to include in the motion a contingency that, if approved at town meeting, it would automatically be sent to the legislature. Then it would be simply a ministerial function for the town manager and her staff to send it on. But absent that, I think they should come back to us. Now, one of these articles was the one that I voted against. I opposed it at town meeting. I would have voted to send it to the legislature because I would have taken the guidance of town meeting on that particular vote. But I would have had the opportunity to speak my mind one more time about it, although it would have been a minority of one. But I do think these should come back to us. And I remember there was the article, the bylaw change, or the special legislation to change the name of this board came back to us. Now, there were some modifications made, but the board sent sent an article to town meeting. I think it was a petition article initially that Dr. Selden and Debbie Aikman sponsored. That went to town meeting. It was voted, and it came back to us to send to the legislature. So that was the process there. But there's an executive function, and that's what we are, and there's a legislative function. Town meeting has no authority to file something in the legislature, as I understand it. Maybe that's too broad a statement, but I think that's the case. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dean. Jeff?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. You know, on second thought, perhaps I won't support it coming back if Mr. DeCastro gets another chance at the bully pulpit on the transfer fee. So, you know, it's interesting. It's an interesting concept, Dean, and I know you just want to, you know, abide by due process, or the correct process, I should say. But of course, I'll support it. But I don't look forward to your regaling again about the transfer fee.
I'm very confident that the legislature is going to do the right thing on that one.
And you know what? I share your confidence that they'll probably never deal with it, but I think it's very important that Chatham get on the record, along with our fellow seasonal resorts that struggle with affordable and attainable housing.
You mean like Somerville?
Yeah, yeah. And Governor Baker is considering transfer fees across the state
Well,
as a
gentlemen?
viable you know, resource. Anyway,
Thank you.
certainly bring them back for our stamp of approval.
Regardless of whether or not anyone has an opportunity to speak again, my thought is, let's follow the process. If someone wants to make, if a proposal comes to us with the content that says, okay, you know, if approved, then we can send it forward. That's okay, but I prefer having the process the way it was, since I signed a letter that sent it out. So I think that, you know, I would tend to agree that we should have it come back to us. It really isn't that much of an issue. I mean, it is an issue for process, and that's stated. So, Shereen.
I'm sorry. I want to make it clear that it's a vote, and there isn't a debate on this or whatever. I mean, it's just, we don't need to get into something that's already been approved, and it is implied. I get concerned that it just starts to bog down in bureaucracy a little bit. So I understand process, Dean, but I really, you know, if we have, like, you know, have to hear again why or why not this is a good idea, that just becomes redundant to me. So that's why I think if we could just put a contingency in the beginning, it might be a better way to do it. Vote is a vote.
Any other comments? I guess it's pretty clear that we could either have a position, or we could decide on that when it comes to us. I mean,
I do have to say one thing, though. It would be dependent upon the chair. You set the agenda, or the chair would set the agenda. So.
Okay, so just to clarify, for moving forward, the board doesn't want the two legislations to come back to the board that were approved at the June town meeting?
No, I don't think that's what you asked.
Okay,
No.
okay, just want to make sure.
This is future.
Future, okay, no problem, yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Dean? No?
Does the board want to get some guidance from town council on this?
Wouldn't hurt.
For moving forward?
Yeah, for moving forward, not the last. Oh, I
So-
was not moving forward.
Yes, when I guess what we'll do is we'll put together an administrative procedure, and we'll have the town council look at it. We don't know when special legislation is going to be proposed again, but I think timing is right to get this done sooner than later.
Yeah, I would agree, and then that'll come to us, back to us,
Yes, for you to approve, yes.
and then we can argue. Jeff?
Not to beat a dead horse, but I think the approval of the board, when we, you know, vote, is an implicit, it's implicit that we're going to send it uptown to the general court. It's a home rule petition. So what are you supposed to do with it? vote it again and then send it to, I mean, anyway, I'm more than happy to bring it back and vote it. And let's not make it bigger than this is. This is process, I guess. And if town council says this is the appropriate process, then that's what we should do this time around. That being said, next time around, this should be baked into the motion. And let's also ask town council whether or not that is appropriate. Thanks.
We're making this far too complicated. But recommendations from the board on certain things could always be not unanimous. We could have a 3-2 vote. So I think just bring it back to the board, rubber stamp it, move it forward. At the chair, run a tight ship. We're overcomplicating this conversation.
Thank you. So, once again, all right, let's get it, you're going to put an administrative process together, let the town council look at it, and then we'll look at that here.
Yes,
and
so
we can debate
we'll
it.
present it to the board for a vote.
Okay, good. All right, let's move on. Next on our agenda is considering calling a fall special town meeting.
Right, a great segue for us. So as you may recall, the board back in July had voted in favor of calling a special town meeting to specifically address the drinking water infrastructure. So while I don't have those warrant articles ready for you to review, I did want to at least start to get a date on the table. So what we have before you is special town meetings require a 14-day posting requirement, and within that 14 days, there's a required voter registration. So we mapped out a couple of options, and 2 are Saturday dates, hopefully during the day, at Veterans Field, and then there's a Monday indoors version back at the Monomoy Regional Middle School gym and auditorium. At this time, all I have right now are the water infrastructure draft articles. There's a couple of other items that we could address as cleanup, and I'll just listen. I don't have a draft article for you, but there might be prior year bills, as well as there's an Old Comers Road intersection safety improvements that the board had discussed. I think it was back in 2021, but it didn't make it on, or early 2021, it didn't make it on the warrant. So we have that. And the other item that there hasn't been discussion before the board, but it's not scheduled to go onto the special town meeting, are the changes and amendments to the Monomoy Regional School Agreement. That agreement provides that any amendments have to occur at an annual town meeting. So that gives you some time, and then for the 2022 annual town meeting, that's when we can decide if we're going to move forward with those amendments. And again, that's a whole nother agenda topic for which we'll bring the superintendent in to discuss those changes. So a couple of other things we were thinking about is, I know that there was a petition zoning article dealing with sheds it was petitioned by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and there was no action taken because there was no one there to present it at the June annual town meeting. So that's, of course, a 2/3 vote, and all of this, the board will be able to vote. Any borrowing for the water infrastructure projects will be a 2/3 vote, but does not require a ballot question or a ballot vote for the debt authorization. So because that is paid by the ratepayers directly. So again, just if the board is amenable to calling a town meeting, a special town meeting, we would set the date and also want to set the last date to close the warrant. And the warrant closing date is at a select board's meeting. So the first date proposed could be Saturday, October 16th. That means that the warrant would close on September 28th. The second date proposed would be Saturday, October 23rd, again at Veterans Field, with a proposed warrant closing date of October 5th. And then the Monday indoors proposed date would be Monday, October 18th, and a warrant closing date of September 28th. We didn't really see it feasible to call a date any sooner than that Saturday, October 16th date.
Jill, just before we open up to the board, I thought I saw an email that said Veterans Field. I had the impression that we couldn't use the middle school, but that's not correct?
The middle school is an opportunity for indoors.
Okay.
So that is the last date on here. That's October 18th.
Okay, thanks. And I guess I'll open it up to the board, and there's another little number of considerations to consider when you can have a two-thirds vote. Shereen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we just heard from the Chamber that they're doing Oktoberfest on the 23rd of October. So that sort of moves us out of the realm for that date, I think, because obviously there'd be a limited participation from our local businesses and employees working that day. I'm still really concerned about the COVID issues that are happening around the Cape, even though we're doing well in Chatham. Indoors is still, in crowded areas, there's still, the Delta variant is a wild card for many, and I think it would keep people away. So I'm looking at the 16th as the appropriate date for a special town meeting.
I'm sorry, I just had to interrupt 1 second, I'm sorry. Shauna, you're giving me the.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I believe Mark, and he can confirm if he taps on the window, that the audio vendor is not available on the 16th.
Audio vendor is not available
no.
on the 16th.
Corey?
I mean, when there's no crystal ball, what's the best option? I mean, I know special town meetings are usually a lower turnout, for good or bad. I think October, we all know the weather is unpredictable. I guess just with those factors and, you know, crossing fingers, I mean, I'm not totally opposed to going to the middle school on the 18th. You know, we could keep the doors open and make every accommodation available. I mean, the kids are going to school with masks on. If participants have to go in with masks on, you know, it's something that, you know, we're sending the kids into school. We should feel as comfortable going to the same school with them too, with the population. There's no great answer. There is no great answer. I mean, we got the 23rd, the Chamber, the merchants are having an event, you said, or was mentioned earlier, and the 16th, now we have a vendor issue. So by default, are we looking at the 18th now?
We are, unless we wanted to go out later. So that's the only other thing, because we do have the holiday in between. I believe that is on the 12th, 11th.
11th.
Yeah, of October, so.
Let's see, it was Dean, and then
I think Jeff was ahead.
Jeff was first? Okay, Jeff.
So thank you, Peter. The weather does get iffy. I mean, outdoors, it might get a little chilly here for our elderly folks, our voters. I agree with Selectman Metters that if we go inside and wear masks, mask up if we have to. If we're still in that mode, then maybe we go inside the 18th, maybe we go inside the 25th. I don't know, but I'm not opposed to going inside at the middle school. And I do think the weather gets kind of iffy this time of year. You're going to bundle up.
Dean?
Jill, is it too late to schedule something in September?
Yes, we would have, so the minimum amount of time would be 14 days, but because the warrants aren't sent to the households, we don't, and I'm not sure exactly if I'm going to have the draft articles done in time for the September 7th Select Board meeting. We're still working with the engineers. So we thought we should at least give some more advance time. FinCom has to provide a recommendation as well, so that's why we were looking out towards October.
What about October 9th? I know that's Columbus Day weekend, I think. Yeah. No? Well, I didn't enjoy the June outdoor town meeting in Veterans Field because I was batting flies and they were stinging these little whatever, or gnats or whatever, all day long for 2 days. And I thought it was, you know, people did the best they could. I thought the moderator did a fine job trying to get it all together, but I don't think it was an ideal setting, and I would prefer to do it indoors. I respect and I agree with the concern that I share the concern that Shireen has mentioned, but once you get into the latter part of October, it can be really cold, especially in the afternoon. So I guess I would favor, not with great enthusiasm, but I would favor the October 18th middle school proposal.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, by default, it's the date that it has to be. That's, obviously, if the 16 isn't working out and the 23rd is a challenge, then it will be what it is, and everybody, we need to provide as much precautionary measures as possible for people, short of vaccination, verification, because I don't think that's fair to the voter, but I will reluctantly agree to the 18th.
I just want to ask one more time. How much later could we go in October? I'm only betting that maybe things get better, but I'm betting against, I don't know what I'm betting against. But if we could, maybe that would be an option. However, my concern is there are a lot of people that don't go into meetings now because they're concerned, and there are plenty of people that do. So, we would have to, I think, can we, well, go ahead. I have two
So
questions. One was the first, and second, can we do the kind of checking as people come in for vaccinations and so forth, or?
So,
I doubt it.
yeah, there's no checking. I mean, we can encourage that people wear masks unless there's some sort of mandate by then that requires people to wear masks indoors. We would just follow that, but certainly we can, I don't think there's air conditioned there, so the doors and fans would have to be open. But we did ask the school department to check every Monday and Tuesday in October, and the Monday, October 18th was the only one that was available.
Dean?
Do we have to have it on a Saturday? I mean, this is going to be an important meeting because we're going to be talking about water quality, PFAS, and everything else.
Well,
I'm just saying, I'm looking at the October 16th. Instead of Saturday, October 16th, could you do it on Friday, October 15th, and do that outdoors?
I think we just have to check with the vendors, and the scheduling of the field is pretty light, so that's something we did our
Or
first
even earlier that week.
We did our first June 2020 town meeting. That was on Monday, and that started at 6:30. So it's just a matter of what time the board would be interested in starting. Understanding you're proposing Friday, it's just what time to
Yeah,
start.
in whichever way Jeff? go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm on vacation from the 9th to the 16th. If we actually get away, I'm scheduled to go on vacation that week. October 9th to 16th.
I wasn't. Mr. Chairman, I wasn't necessarily limiting it to Friday. You could move it, I understand your vacation. You could do it on Monday. You could do it on
Exactly, yeah.
Tuesday. I mean, I know the people do work, and that's going to present an issue, but if we want to, you're right, both of you are right, you're going to discourage some people from attending because they don't attend meetings now indoors. And you could do it outside earlier. If you're going to have an outside event in October, you better do it earlier in the month rather than later in the month. And you better do it earlier in the day or midday rather than late afternoon.
Yes.
So I just throw that out. I understand Select Board Member Dykens can't be there that week, and I know water quality is really important to you.
It's huge.
As to all of us. So I don't know, I just throw that out.
There's no easy answer. Anybody else? I would prefer, as much as, I don't think you'd be chasing bugs away, but the weather we'd have to be concerned about, and if we should do it earlier, the question is if, you do it on a Saturday because we've been trying to get more people to attend. If we do it during a weekday, we may not be able to. I get a lot of other people not to attend, so I'm sort of, I am I'm reluctant to go inside and have a lot of people show up. I mean, I don't know, I just don't, I see, well, we would have to be wearing, we have to be wearing masks, I would assume, but it all depends. We'd follow whatever the state, or our health department guidelines are, I guess. Does anybody have an out-of-the-box answer? No, doesn't look like. Well, we,
Shauna's got her hand up.
oh, I'm sorry, I should have gone there, sorry. Go ahead, Shauna.
Might we determine what time the Oktoberfest activities are going to start on Saturday, the 23rd? And if it's not until 10 or 11, do something at 8 in the morning or 9 in the
That's not a
morning?
bad
If
idea.
it's only a
What's going
few
on at
articles?
Oktoberfest? That's-
It might be better to do it after the Oktoberfest. Kidding. That was a joke.
Yeah, I don't know when they start their festivities.
Usually,
Yeah,
usually around
go ahead,
noon.
Dee.
Harwich is having a special town meeting. What's the date of theirs?
Theirs is on the 18th indoors at their community center
Yours.
Indoors. Do they
at this
have
time.
This kind of, a water, I mean, well, we don't know what's on their agenda, I guess. Doesn't make a difference. Okay. Okay,
I think we're in a rock and a
we're,
hard place.
yeah, I know,
Just
we're
make
gonna
a
have to pick
decision.
one.
Yeah.
And, go ahead, Corey. And
Okay, we'll throw another monkey wrench into it. So are we picking a date with a rain date or a alternative date in case something, are we putting two dates on the table? Like,
yeah, we'll have to.
I'm just mechanics wise.
We usually do, so,
Yeah.
well, rain date for the outdoor ones.
Right.
We leave it open, just in case. But, so we'll set a date for the town meeting, or special town meeting, and then we'll have a suggested date for the rain,
Rain date.
yeah, the rain date.
Okay.
The field's difficult. If there's a multi-day rain event, we have to, skip a day and so forth. So I think our intention as staff is to make it as focused on the drinking water infrastructure so that we can meet our quorum, which actually we're still allowed to not have a quorum. Our quorum is 100, so there's still those quorum requirements that are waived, but have people in and out as soon as possible with enough information for them to vote.
Go ahead, Corey.
If we did have it indoors, we could probably also, could we still use the auditorium and spread more people out like we do in regular, circumstances? I mean, we could use more space. Because if we did it at the middle school, you've got the main gymnasium, you got the auditorium, and then you got what they call the slim gym, which we've used before in other meetings. So we could really spread people out if that was a concern, physically to do it as much distancing as possible. We do have a couple options there.
That's not a bad idea.
I do know we've used the auditorium. I think Channel 8, I'm not sure if Mark had been with the town, but that's something that we can ask with Channel 18.
We did it for the regionalization vote, but we used all three locations.
Does anybody, just to go back, just put it down, Oktoberfest. I'm trying to, we don't know what all is happening on Oktoberfest, but we expect that all during the day, they're going to have activities.
Well, there's usually food trucks down at the Keigel Park and some music, and people are walking through town. It's, they've,
Water conservation, more beer being drank.
yeah,
Yeah,
they've
well,
got all kinds of
like you
stuff
said,
going
have
on.
it after.
So let's, let's just double back and we're not going to have a perfect attendance on anything we do. So it's either Saturday morning prior to Oktoberfest or it's inside at the gym. And we all know that the inside at the gym is probably going to be the easiest for the town to put together versus, the outside event. And we've got weather contingencies, so we've got health, but you made a good point about being able to spread people out into various areas. So, I still will be reluctant, but I would approve the 18th.
Jeff?
As would I, and we encourage folks to mask up and be socially distant and provide them more space, as Selectman Metters noted, in that venue. I think that would work.
Dean?
Well, just following up on what Jill said, we should keep the warrant pretty spare. I know that we could have some petition articles, but I think when we had the last couple of special town meetings, including the one on the Monomoy Theater, we could have had petition articles, and the public was pretty good about not putting them forward and letting them go to annual town meetings. So, it is, there's just a 5-day difference between the 18th and the 23rd.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think if we move towards the 18th and it's indoors, Corey's recommendation to spread out, but then there's some logistics of how people are going to ask questions or do what they're going to do, but I think that's workable. And you're right, I remember town meetings where I was in an extra room. That was a few years ago, so. You're right, it's a rock and a hard place. But I think 18th is, whether we like it or not, that's when it is. Unless anybody else has any other comments? No, do you need, that good enough?
That is good enough. What I'll do is I know we meet in 2 weeks. If there's any changes or anything, or any other date that I can propose, I'll certainly bring it back to the board. So we can tentatively call it for October 18th, and then if there's any changes, I can report back at the next meeting.
Okay. Fine, thank you. All right. Oh, Dean?
Do you want to?
She was fine with the consent.
Well, do you want to include a second option for doing it outdoors on the 23rd, depending on what time of day, as Shireen was suggesting?
We can do it. I just Googled it and nothing came up about the time. So if you want to add that to the motion, so we'll do a vote as an alternative date, time to be determined.
We're not taking a vote tonight. We don't have to take a vote tonight, right? Or-
You don't have to, but at some point, we're going to have to formally open the warrant and so forth.
But I was thinking you were going to come back to us on September the
Yeah, that's what I.
3rd with your recommendation, or is that what you?
Yes, what did I just say?
Yeah, that's what I thought you said.
I can come back on September 7th. Why don't I come back on September 7th, just to make sure that we can actually accommodate all the extra rooms at the middle school and provide a report to the board.
And also check on the 23rd early.
In early, okay.
And it won't be too late to take a vote at that night on the 7th of September to do either of these locations?
No, because the warrant closing, we anticipated for September 28th, so we should be fine.
Okay.
Oh, we're good. Okay, so that's good. So we have the 18th and the 23rd.
Okay.
Hey, good.
Thank you.
That's fine. All right. Thank you, Jill. Let's move on to the appointments. The first one we have is the Cemetery Commission. We have one vacancy for the term to June 30th, 2024. And we have some others that I have an email on that we can discuss. But in any case, do I have any, Jeff?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to appoint William Bystrom to the Cemetery Commission until June 30th, 2024, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
I'll second.
And you second?
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, so do we have any others?
I have a nomination. I'd like to nominate Stephen Burlingame to the Cemetery Commission for that same period.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'm going to second for the sake of seconding.
Okay. I'll take a tally of the board, and I'll start down with Jeff.
Bill Bystrom.
Okay. Mr. Castro?
Stephen Burlingame.
Okay.
William Bystrom.
Okay. Shereen?
William Bystrom.
And the chair says Bystrom. So congratulations, Stephen Burlingame will have an opportunity, hopefully within the next year.
Yes.
Summer Residence Advisory Committee, we have one vacancy for a term of June 30th, 2023. We also have another vacancy for one full member, June 30th, 2024, because we had a person become a full-time resident. And one vacancy for an associate term, June 30th, 2022. So now we have two vacancies for full members. Okay, Jeff?
Just a point of clarification, you said we have two full-time on SRAC, one ending 23 and one ending 24?
That's
Is that what you
correct.
said? Okay.
Right?
Like,
Gianna? Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I'd like to nominate Jeff Spalter for the full-time to 2024.
Second.
We have a second. Any other nominations for 2024? None. So let's take a vote. Shereen?
Spalter.
Yeah, aye. Yes.
Aye. And Jean?
Jeff Spalter. Aye.
And
Aye.
And the chair says aye. We have another opportunity. Jeff?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Mr. Ned Chapman for a vacancy, a full-term vacancy until 2023.
Okay.
Second.
Second? We have a second. Start with Shereen.
Aye.
Aye.
Corey, Dean,
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. All right, now we have the Waterways Committee. We have one vacancy for a term to June 30th, 2022, and one vacancy for the term of, June 30th, 2024.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Craig Martin until June 30th, 2024, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second.
Second, any others? Nope. Let's take a vote.
Aye.
Jeff, Dean,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Shereen?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Any other nominations? Okay. There we go. Thank you very much. And thank you for everybody who applied. And now we are through with our public comments. We're moving to executive session. And let me make a motion for executive session, and we will not come back to public session. We have a motion. Gene?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Select Board go into executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Number 3, to discuss strategy regarding pending and threatened litigation, specifically, 1, town joinder in multi-district PFAS litigation, and 2, Shiaba Construction Fish Pier contract claims, and the chair declares that an open meeting would be detrimental to the litigating position of the body.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Jeff?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Shereen?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. That's it for our public meeting, and thank you all, and good night, Chatham.